What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Week 12 edition of the DFS MVP podcast. I'm your host, TJ Hernandez, the director of DFS at 4for4.com. As always, with my co-hosts, John Daigle, Pat Corain. Fellas, we made it through Thanksgiving. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. The walkthrough's not published yet, so in some ways I have not made it through Thanksgiving. But that's because we did it. I did a Thanksgiving walkthrough, which I had to push back the regular walkthrough one day, but got that out there for the people. It was completely free, so hopefully everyone enjoyed that. And now I'll be working dutifully to complete my normal work later.
Yeah, we're on holiday scheduling. Everything's
right.
late except for this podcast.
Always, the hardest part about Thanksgiving is still trying to jam in everything around the 48 hours off. Like I was with friends last night, and I think everyone was just tired in general from Wednesday night because everyone usually goes into Thursday morning hungover, scrambles to prep food very last second as they slog around their kitchen, and then everyone's tired. But I was telling everyone, I was like, no, I get 48 hours off basically together for the first time in 7 months. We're staying up. We're taking this one home.
I told myself I was going to take it easy Wednesday because I had to be up for Discord chat before the early games. I told myself I was going to take it easy yesterday because I had a long day on Friday. I'm just nursing a hangover over here, boys.
It's okay. I popped in the Discord. I literally said, I think I did three things. I said overweight on Jaden Reed and Brandon Cooks and Debo over Ayuk. And I was like, okay. So
love that.
We all got there. We were okay.
Yeah, we still somehow made some money yesterday, so it was a good day. Corain, as you mentioned, walkthrough not out yet, but I mean, anything you want to preview before we get into it today that's popping to you right now?
Yeah, if you subscribe to the Fantasy Life newsletter, you would have seen AJ Brown is going to be the cover boy. That I highlighted him with a little excerpt there this morning. So that is the kind of, I don't think this will be, it's somewhat obvious to go right back to AJ Brown after he bombs, but doesn't look like he's going to come in as big time chalk because he is super expensive on DraftKings. We've got some other options there. So I love going back to AJ Brown. I'll be talking about him throughout this show.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that very shortly. As I mentioned, we have not updated ownership projections yet, but they will be up late tonight, early tomorrow. Before we do get into it, if you want to get access to those ownership projections, sign up for the DFS subscription ASAP at 4for4. Black Friday deal. It's $6.99. It's less than a buy-in of the Sunday Million on FanDuel. Get in there, you get access. We go through Super Bowl. This is the time of year where there are a ton of random DFS slates. We're going to start getting Saturday games. I think there's Christmas games. I think that's on a Monday. I think we have another Friday game coming up. So tons of slates, tons of value. I mean, we're basically giving that thing away through Monday, but sign up for it now so you can start prepping for kickoff this Sunday. And once you do that, upgrade to the Solver, the best optimizer in the game. Once you upgrade to that, everything from 4for4 will automatically be synced to Solver. Let's jump right into it. Always a short slate the day, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, obviously. Bunch of games on Thanksgiving, another Friday game. So only a 10-game slate and a kind of ugly slate, but it is very top heavy. And from the game and a player perspective, we haven't seen a lot, even in the past couple of years, where we just have such a clear tier of ownership, and it's at every single position where there's one or two guys at every position that are just lapping the field in ownership. So it's kind of like an old school slate in that respect, not as flat as we've come to see. So that will be fun because we will have some spots that feel like obvious pivots, but we may have to lean into some really heavy chalk. And the highest total on the slate this week is the late game Eagles versus Bills, which Corain mentioned. 425 kickoff there. But because Eagles and Bills are always very expensive, starting with the quarterbacks, it's always just tough to get to these spots, especially on DraftKings. So on FanDuel, this game will probably be very popular. On DraftKings, salary's going to keep it so that everyone's moderately owned. Jalen Hurts will be very popular. just because he's always popular. But as you mentioned, AJ Brown and Devontae Adams-Crane aren't going to be like crazy chalky, but the unique thing about them right now is Goddard's out. So we're going to get a super concentrated target share on these guys. So, I mean, you mentioned AJ as the cover boy. How do you like playing the Eagles side? And do we need to think about Swift, because Bills are 20th in scheduled just points allowed to the running backs? That's their lowest ranking against any position.
Yeah, I think Swift is definitely someone to think about. I think maybe you could play like Hurts, Brown, and Swift, given that it's a fairly kind of, there's not a lot of interesting stuff for me on the slate. So I think you could do that. Certainly I would want to play it through AJ Brown one way or another. Smith is expensive enough that the double is tough, but I could see it. But yeah, I think the thing here, the reason I like this spot so much is that the Eagles are a run-heavy team, but a lot of that, I think, is because of the situation. They're one of these teams that is dictating the run to their opponents. They have just a 57% expected pass rate, which is the second lowest in the league. Only the 49ers are lower. They're playing things similarly to the 49ers and the Ravens. When they're ahead, they're fine just kind of running the ball down people's throats. But they have a 10% pass rate over expected on first down, which is super aggressive. That's like higher than the Bills, it's right with the Commanders, who are at 11%. They're the only team higher than the Eagles on first down, which is an indication that this is a team who does view the passing game as their primary strength. And so we're looking for them to get pushed by the Bills here. And we're also looking at a Bills defense that, was pretty good to start the season, but then had all of those injuries and has been quite poor since. They still have a pretty strong pass rush, but they look very vulnerable in the secondary. So we're talking about a team that, should be able to attack downfield. They should be able to, hit their first read pretty well against this week's secondary. That's all really good for AJ Brown. So this just looks like a potential bounce back blow up spot for Brown. I like Hurts a lot here too. I would be curious on your guys' thoughts of how to make this kind of work salary wise other than that.
Yeah, so I mean, I was just going to say, like, this is actually, even though, again, specifically on DraftKings, it's always a little bit easier on FanDuel. This is a week where you can double like these expensive plays, whether it be Eagles or someone else, and like not be giving up a ton in projection, because there are like cheap wide receivers that are projecting decently. Obviously, it's not going to be great, but like the Justin Watson types, Khalil Shakir on the other side, the Arizona cheap wide receivers. There aren't a lot of, we're not really paying up at running back. So like you can do expensive doubles this week. What do you think, Daigle?
I completely agree. I'm also interested in the Josh Allen side of it all too, because it's not like the Eagles got better on defense out of their bye. Like the Chiefs had a fumble inside the 5-yard line and Patrick Mahomes threw an end zone interception. Otherwise they would have put up 30 and just walked over the Eagles.
Well, and the MVS, I mean,
yeah, and the MVS drop. We also had a Justin Watson drop touchdown. Like, yeah, it should have been all over, but of course they didn't get there. Too many mistakes. So yeah, Josh Allen, and that's kind of like my way of looking at it is that regardless of if I get to Eagles doubles, Allen doubles, I'm going to get there most likely just because it's literally a 5 quarterback pool slate for me, and 4 of them are in the same games against one another. And Khalil Shakir, I think, is the way to unlock the Bills. Like, even if that's a onslaught with all 3 of their receivers and just like moving on from Dalton Kincaid in this spot anyways, just because last week, the way the Jets play defense, it just makes sense that they hammer Kincaid and ignore their wide receivers altogether, which is exactly what happened. They didn't even target Gabe Davis on the boundary against DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, whereas I don't expect that to happen whatsoever. So yeah, Eagles doubles totally fine, but to me it unlocks more, and I'll be curious to see where people get by Sunday morning, because Gabe Davis and Shakir are cheaper, so it actually affords you more, even bringing along AJ Brown or Devonta Smith with Allen doubles or triples.
Yeah, I think people just hate playing Gabe Davis. So I think there's a chance that there's Kincaid him and McBride will be two of the chalkiest players on the slate. So I do think people like naturally get to like a Shakir pivot. I don't think people just hate playing Gabe Davis. People hate Gabe Davis.
I completely agree with that. Yeah. What do you guys think about doing if you were to play from the Hurts side, a double bring back with Kincaid and Shakir? Get tight end taken care of, get that cheap piece.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of always, and this has burned me because McBride's went off a couple times, but like I'm kind of always in the camp that if I'm going to play the chalky tight end, I want to do them in a correlated way.
Mm-hmm. And we're at the point now with McBride where at 4,700, at least on DraftKings, more expensive on FanDuel. You do have to think twice about it because at those prices, every tight end, is volatile. Whereas previously when it was under 4K, you had no choice but to play him. But now in tournaments, you can feel comfortable fading him.
Yeah. They like Dago mentioned, playing the Bill side is nice. Eagles are like arguably the biggest pass funnel in the league, at least from a fantasy perspective. When we adjust for strength of schedule, fewest points allowed to running back, 28th versus quarterback, 31st versus wide receivers. From a cash game perspective, Hurts is the top value at 4-4 on FanDuel. Kincaid the top value on both sites, and Diggs is a top 2 wide receiver value on FanDuel as well. Game with a 47.5 point total. This game is early. Jaguars at Texans. Jaguars favored by 1.5 points, giving them a team total of 24.5. Texans a team total of 23 as slight underdogs at home. Daigle, Jacksonville is actually projecting as the most popular passing attack on the slate, and that has a lot to do with salary, obviously. But they have a lot of pieces we can use. You and Paulson discussed the splits for Calvin Ridley with Zay Jones on T-Map. So if we're going to get mega chalk on Kirk, Ingram, maybe even ETN, if we are playing Trevor Lawrence chalk, do you like leaning into those Ridley with Zay Jones splits this week?
Still thinking about it. I definitely prefer the Texans side of this. The Jaguars are interesting because I still have major question marks about their defense, which is why what makes me excited about Stroud doubles in a week where I don't think anyone's going to play them that's kind of exciting. But for the other side of the ball, one, I always hate when I can't quantify why a situation happened. Yeah. And no one's really qualifying why Calvin Ridley was better with Zay Jones. They're just saying it. They're just saying, he ran different routes. No, he didn't actually. He just caught
the Hayden Winks
same type of targets.
Pointing out that he wasn't even on the field on one of the Ridley touchdowns.
Yeah. It's nothing changed for Calvin Ridley. He just caught the same volatile targets that he didn't catch previously. Yeah. So that makes me really worried about like running back Calvin Ridley in DFS. But yeah, Christian Kirk I think is fine. The thing is Christian Kirk is more of a cash game play. We've seen Travis Etienne actually not only be inefficient now, really like the last 3 or 4 weeks, he continues only getting there on touchdowns. He is Tony Pollard, except he goes into the end zone instead of he doesn't. Like, and that's
Pollard's back, man. Pollard scores 2 weeks in a row. Pollard's back.
Yeah, scored 2 weeks in a row, but like it's not a good thing for ETN though. That like it's the same inefficiency. So I don't know, but either way, I'm excited about the Texans. I know that.
Yeah, the splits things, and I was kind of hoping that was your answer because I agree with you. But I mean, the more important thing for Ridley, if we're looking at him, isn't the splits with Zay Jones. It's the fact that he's going to be like, I don't know, fringe double digit own just because people want to play this game, where Kirk and Ingram are going to be like 20%, 25%. So I don't want to play 25% Christian Kirk or Evan Ingram.
The good thing is the Texans have been leaking production, at least lately, through the air now. Baker Mayfield averaged 8.8 yards per attempt. Burrow had 347 and 2. And then Kyler Murray at least rushed for 50 yards and a touchdown. So they have been getting worse, as we expect with all their injuries finally. And so it would make sense that Trevor Lawrence does get there. But also what's happening is I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be teetered as the cash game option if you spin down, even though I think Gardner Minshew may be just a better play overall. But and so, I'm trying to weigh it by Sunday morning. There's a lot going on with the Jaguar side and a lot that I don't trust, really.
Yeah, the Jaguar side does feel gross. And like Stroud has been ascending so quickly, and like I feel like it's very rare that we get a offense that it's so trendy to like the Texans, and we're gonna get them as the pivot offense. Like I love that. Corain, if Jacksonville is as owned as expected, like, do you agree that we love the Stroud side? Like Jacksonville is like kind of a pass funnel. Like you've said on here before that they're a fake good rush defense, but you can't throw on them. And Tank Dell's gonna be owned, but like we can either, I mean, I don't think we need to fade Dell. We can like offset it with Stroud ownership, who is kind of expensive too, which is another reason he's not gonna be played. How do you like this Texans offense? And if Dameon Pierce comes back, like, are we still on Singletary?
I'll start with the Singletary side. He scares me a bit because he's just been like, he's such a touch consolidator, and like he just vacuums up all the touches and then adds mediocre efficiency, and that's good for fantasy. But he's not like in a split role. I'm not that into him. But I am into this Texans pivot. I think this is like a very nice opportunity, I think, and one that doesn't come around that often in DFS these days, where I don't think this is a very good spot for the Jaguars. Yeah. And the chalk is on it, right? Yeah. And I think this is a sneaky good spot for the Texans, and that's the natural pivot based on the ownership. So I'm excited. I do think that I want to play this through Tank Dell. I think when I look at this matchup, why do I like it a little bit for the Texans? I think with CJ Stroud, he has been awesome from a clean pocket. And the Jaguars do not have a very good pass rush, but they have a really good secondary. This is the number one defense at defending the splash zone. And the Texans, that's how they attack, deep middle of the field. This is not going to be an area where, not going to be a game where the Texans are just like crushing with big plays over the middle of the field like they were against the Buccaneers. But we are looking at a matchup where Stroud should have time to throw. And so I want to play it through the wide receiver that I think is just the best at getting open. And that's Tank Dell. He is an elite open score wide receiver. And he also has the deepest ADOT of the receivers. So time to throw, I want the deep ADOT. So I'm looking at big plays downfield, Tank Dell. Maybe they're more along the sidelines, right? Maybe we're not getting that over the middle stuff where Nico Collins has really excelled. Mm-hmm. So I would be wanting to go. Now, certainly you could double it with those two, but as gross as it is, I think you could throw Robert Woods in there. That could be a way that you double it with Tank Dell, because he's only $4K, so he's a little bit of a salary saver. You could throw in Schultz as well. The bringbacks, I think, are kind of, I don't like the bring back element because it's going to be owned, but I do think the only part of this that I don't love is that I think you want the Jaguars to push a little bit, because the Texans fundamentally, I think, are a run first team. But, on this slate, I still think the Texans pivot is really interesting.
Yeah. My only concern with Dell is that he does get like mega steamed, because he's just such a good play. And I think if people are seeing the Jaguars ownership projections come in, they're going to want to play Dell a lot. Like I agree with you that that's how I want to play it, especially if it's going to be Stroud at like, I don't know, like comfortable single digit ownership. I just really hope Tank Dell, we don't get there and Tank Dell's 25%. But then, like, I mean, am I even that mad if he's 25%?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't love it if I was using Dell as like a one-off, but if I'm building it around Stroud going off, I think Dell he's how I want to play it. I just think it's so much. Yeah.
Cash game notes. As we mentioned, a lot of the Jaguars are popping. Lawrence top 3 value on both sites. ETN popping and some DraftKings optos, even though I don't really love that. Christian Kirk has a high optimum rate on both sites, and Tank Dell is a top 3 wide receiver on both sites for projections. Corain, stay with you for Rams at Cardinals. 45.5 point total in this game. Another late kickoff, 4:05. Rams slight favorites. I don't know if the line moved since the Cup announcement happened, but I have it down as 45.5 with Rams favored by 2.5 and a 24 point total. The big thing here is they're getting Kyron back. And as I said, Cup is going to be active. So, I mean, I guess two questions. One, what does it look like with Cup back? Like, does he just come back to a full workload? And two, like, is Kyron one of the best contrarian plays of the week? Like, they said he's going to go back to his like full workload.
But I mean, they cut Darrell Henderson.
Yeah.
So like, he doesn't have to. I mean, I know they have other guys they could mix in, but he was dominating touches. That's I think a clear signal that they trust his health. He was awesome against this Cardinals defense right before he was injured.
Yeah.
And this Cardinals defense is a run funnel. And, I think, and the Rams are also a run funnel. So like you could say, oh, this could shoot out because, Kyler Murray's going to be successful against this Rams defense and that'll push the Rams, off of a conservative game plan. But I think the Rams will be able to do what they want to do here. And I think the Cardinals will be happy if this game is, fairly balanced to conservative in its approach. So I think Kyron is going to have no problem getting a lot of work. And he's been pretty good. He hasn't been amazing, but he's in that kind of Devin Singletary mold / maybe, a little bit better where he's able to consolidate touches and then add some efficiency on top of that. I think he's an awesome play. Just kind of happy to see that he's not really profiling as all that owned right now. I think the Cup side of it is definitely interesting. I don't know. I mean, Puka is the guy I'm more interested in here. Like like I don't have to worry about it in terms of his health. And one thing about the Cardinals is they don't take away first reads well. So if I think Kupp's kind of interesting because, he has a really high first read target rate, but I also think Puka Nacua is interesting because he has a first read target rate just behind Cooper Kupp. And I think the Rams, will be able to kind of drop back and execute fairly well this week.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about Kyron is he's priced really close to JT, who's going to be one of the chalkiest players on the slate. So like that's just such a nice salary pivot. Daigle, on the Cardinals side, since we've seen Kyler come back, slight bump in passing rate over expectation, but the most notable thing is besides Trey McBride, he's really been spreading out the targets quite a bunch. So I kind of like my DFS brain says now people want to be off Marquise Brown because he's lost his target share. If we're getting him at like high single digit ownership, I think this could be a spot to go to him when everyone's just seeing like Rondale getting like random 25% targets and things like that.
The only thing is with Marquise Brown DMP on Thursday and Friday, I don't think he plays. I think that's calling it pretty close. Yeah. So if Marquise is not out there, then what happens to the entire target tree? Yeah. That's when it becomes interesting. Greg Dortch will probably be played in cash games, and Dortch has proven anytime he's out there, he earns targets. So, it'll be interesting. I'm not sure how I would play it just yet. It probably would be trying to prioritize McBride, but definitely I'd be interested in Dortch in tournaments too.
Yeah, McBride's already projecting as one of the chalkiest players on the slate. If Brown does sit, I would guess Dortch is the one that ends up getting steamed.
Yeah, because Michael Wilson's already been ruled out too, and I don't know about Zach Pascal just yet. Yeah.
Do we like? I don't really know how I'm like super lukewarm on James Conner. Like if these wide receivers and McBride do end up getting steamed with Marquise Brown out, do we want to play James Conner?
I think he's fine. His workload has been pretty valuable. He's underperformed it the last couple of weeks. He was overperforming it, I think, before that. But this is a matchup where you can run on the Rams, and I think the Cardinals will try to for sure.
For cash games, with Cooper Kupp back, the only player that's projecting as a clear cash game value is Trey McBride, top 3 value on both sides, and he's $600 less than Kincaid on DK, so probably have to lock him in there. On FanDuel, Connor's projecting as like a fringe cash game play, but I don't know if I get there in cash. Daigle, this game is like sneaky intriguing to me. Colts versus the Buccaneers, 44.5 point total, early kickoff. Colts favored by 2.5, 23.5 total for the Colts. It looks like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman are both going to be super chalky here. I guess it's going to have a little bit to do with how if Downs is active, but I think Pittman leading the league in target share over the last month is probably chalky no matter what. So like, how do you play out this situation where we have two teammates that are super chalky and probably do cannibalize each other on the same team?
Normally in a slate I'd feel comfortable saying you just bring Gardner Minshew along because even 4 of the last 6 quarterbacks out of the Bucks bye have finished as top 3 options on the week. Most recently, Brock Purdy, who we all talked about last week. He took in the Millie Maker in a genius naked Brock Purdy just to fit everything else around.
That was a good lineup.
It was amazing.
What was everyone talking about that was dumb because they didn't correlate? That
was so intelligent. It was so good. I was actually upset I didn't get there because it wasn't even Galaxy Brain. It made so much sense to fit everything else in around him. So yeah, but I just don't feel comfortable suggesting that in this slate, even though I do like Gardner Minshew a lot, especially at his price. It just seems like I want to get to Hurts or Josh Allen. And it feels like those guys, it's the kind of week where they just crush you compared to Gardner Minshew. So yeah, that's kind of, but I mean, it's the same spot we talked about with every quarterback so far. C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy, Bucks out of their bye. They can't cover. They're also 26th in pressure rate. They're just not stopping anyone, which creates a good environment for everyone.
Yeah. Do you like Downs as a cheap pivot here? Or do you think if we're playing Downs, like we have to play him in a stack?
I personally think because of his injury, you have to play him in a stack. Yeah. He is coming off a bye. Last we saw, he re-aggravated his injury. He did make that one big catch, though, before he got injured again in Frankfurt. So I think you have to play him in a stack. I don't think he's like cheap enough to where he's a one-off.
Yeah. What is it?
Especially because I do like some of the
48.
The cheaper options that are going overlooked. Like we talked about, maybe people catch up to Greg Dortch. We'll talk about Justin Watson. There are actually some really good cheap plays on this slate. Shakir as well.
Yeah. Crane, on Tampa's side, the player that is really standing out is Rachaad White. India's 29th in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs. White's one of 10 backs with at least 75% of his backfield share over the last month. So this is another interesting chalk spot because he'd probably be the second highest on running back. So how do you handle a slate where we have two chalky running backs in the same slate or in the same game? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for White. He has not been a good rusher, so that the matchup part of it is a little bit less appealing for that. But he's going to get work as a receiver. The guy who I think is pretty interesting here is Mike Evans.
Yeah.
The concern is that this game they don't really push each other that much, and so it becomes a little bit. There's not that many points in this game, but I think there's kind of a sneaky good matchup for Baker Mayfield. Colts are vulnerable over the deep middle of the field. Buccaneers have attacked there. I think we're probably going to see some mistakes out of Mayfield. The Colts do have a good pass rush, but this is a spot where I think Evans, who's got like a really strong profile, he's 92nd percentile on open score. He's got a 2.49 yards per route run, and that's backed up by target volume. And he is their downfield, over the middle of the field receiver, which is a really good fit for this matchup. So maybe that's the way. If you pivot to Evans, that gets you off of White, probably. I mean, I guess you could double Mayfield, with Evans and White. I think that would certainly, because I don't know that I want to go to Otten, and I don't love Godwin here, so that would be interesting. I was disappointed to see how chalky Pittman is because I do like this matchup for him a lot, but yeah, I don't mind that Mayfield, White, and Evans double, and I think Evans being the real key piece of that is a different way to play this game.
Yeah, that's the one that caught my eye. If everyone's going to play JT and Pittman, I think a lot of people are not a lot, but I think a fair amount of people will get to like some kind of combos of Minshew and Downs, and I think Evans probably goes overlooked enough where, if we get 28 DK points out of a 10% Mike Evans and play him with Rachaad White, like I like that play a lot.
That's what I don't know if I get there, but yeah, that's why Minshew does make sense. Plus, he's so cheap that you then can still afford to pay up for the Bills Eagle stacks just without the quarterback. The only thing is for Jonathan Taylor, it's not even a good matchup. Like it's a terrible matchup. For as much as the Bucs have been laying down for out of their bye in the air, they're still an elite run defense. Like out of their bye, they're still top 5 and limiting running backs to yards per carry. They're 6th in limiting explosive runs as well. So it's not even a good matchup for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, if like we always talk about like when is it bad chalk, and usually it's bad chalk when it's a player is getting pumped up just kind of out of a lack of options, and that's kind of what Taylor is this week, right? Like, I mean, if you look at the top projected players, it's Jonathan Taylor, Etienne, Saquon, and then Rachaad White, and then just like a drop off. Like it's a bad run. It's a bad running back slate. Yeah. It's a really. That's why, like I said, like a guy like Kyren, like if we're getting him at 8%, I love that. I mean, I don't. Yeah, James Conner. Like if we're getting him at high single digits, the chalk running backs are rough, man.
I am a little afraid of JT here, though. The Buccaneers are first in EPA allowed per rush, which is as good as you can get, but they've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns, and I feel like that's maybe skewing those numbers a little bit. And some of the other metrics they're not very good. They're only 25th in run stop win rate. So if JT is going to get all the work like he did before the bye when he had 88% of the carries, like I almost feel like I have to fade him at the massive chalk he's going to come in at, but I'm going to go on the record that I'm nervous about that.
Yeah, I mean, if he was priced like he's supposed to be, like if he was like, I don't know, 7,600, would anybody be playing him instead of 69?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's
in this slate, maybe.
Yeah, I guess on this slate. But yeah, I mean, he could definitely fail here. JT, Rachaad White, and Pittman are all popping as top 3 values at their positions on both sites. So I mean, JT is probably the cash game running back. You probably don't have to play him and White together, but you can in cash. And receiver's kind of weird. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get to Pittman in cash, but he is projecting as a great value. Those are the games with high game totals with relatively short spreads. The one team projecting for a kind of healthy total in an expected blowout are the Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 8.5 with a 25.75 team total. The game is down to 43-point total. Raiders down at 17.25 team total. So Corain, we don't usually lead with a DST, but Chiefs are only 3,100, and they might get to like 30% on DraftKings. And I mean, they're from a fantasy perspective, they're the best defense in the league. They're top 6 in schedule just points to every single position. So I'm gonna start with DST. Like, can we play a 30% defense?
I mean, so what's the situation in terms of pass attempts against? I think is the way to think through this, because the Raiders, they did show a willingness to pass last week, but the Chiefs are not like the Chiefs that we've gotten used to here. Like their defense is so good, and then the offense is struggling a little bit. So we also saw the Chiefs go run first for the first time all season last week. So I don't know, like if they're going to dictate the high level of passing attempts that we would normally expect. Certainly that would be my baseline expectation, but is there enough like fragility to that to get you off of the defense? I think probably, where the Raiders maybe just kind of try to lean on Josh Jacobs here. But it's pretty good. I mean, I think one of the things about the Chiefs they're doing so well is they are taking away first reads. And so it is like a really rough matchup for Aiden O'Connell. Like they're not going to just let him go to Devontae Adams here, and he's going to have to find other things to do. And some of those other things might be throwing interceptions.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to get to like heavily stacking this game. I think it is interesting if people are going to go expensive quarterbacks, expensive pass catcher. It's going to be some combo of like Hurts, Allen, and then one of their pass catchers. So Kelsey always gets like moderate ownership, but it has to be a really unique situation for him to get like crazy out of control. So I think Mahomes Kelsey is like the pivot if you have like Diggs or AJ in your flex. But I don't know if we like, do we start there at all? Or do we only pivot to Kelsey Mahomes combos if we need a late swap or behind?
It's a great question.
I don't know that I'm starting there.
It's still the highest team total on the slate, as you mentioned, even over the Bills and Eagles. Like the Chiefs have the highest total.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely want pieces. Justin Watson is the stone minimum, and I don't know why.
Do we trust Watson?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. The last 2 weeks around their bye, he led the team in routes run in both games and led them in targets in both games.
He led the wide receivers in routes run.
Correct. Last week, he led the entire team in routes run.
Okay.
He had more than Kelsey. He against the Eagles. He dropped the touchdown, but yeah. So yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't trust him. You don't trust Rashee Rice. Like they're still doing the rotational thing.
Yeah.
And plus, like where we need value, and you can bring along Watson with with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. The thing is, Isaiah Pacheco, because Jarrett McKinnon is ruled out, also got a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
And so you could just tack him on, play the Chiefs defense, or just avoid the. I don't think you even need the Chiefs defense. We'll get to defenses in a bit, but overall, I feel like I'm definitely going to be playing 2 Chiefs at least because I want this team total for sure.
Yeah, Pacheco is a smash play, and he'll
get. Again, if they don't drop the touchdowns, they score 30 plus. Like it was just mistakes. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, on the Raiders side, I mean, like Corinne said, like we don't expect them to push the Chiefs by any means. But as you mentioned on T-Map, Daigle, Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce have basically killed the passing game work for Jacoby Myers and Josh Jacobs. Again, KC top 6 and adjusted fantasy points to every single position. I mean, do we even think about like 5% Devontae if we do play the Chiefs side?
I don't know. I think I'd be like trying to play it through maybe like I don't know, Michael Mayer or just although I mean you could do a double tight end with Kelsey and cheap Mayer or something. I'm really worried about them just trying to take away Devontae Adams. Like that's kind of what they do. So at 7,800, I don't think so.
Not only that, I don't want to waste. Man, I don't want that salary that I could be spending on AJ Brown or Stephon Diggs to go to Devontae Adams. That's my thing.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
I think you're giving up quite a bit of projection. Let me see what we have for.
I could definitely see myself playing Patrick Mahomes stacks. 100%. I could definitely do that. But I don't need a run back unless it's Michael Mayer. But again, if we're blocking that with Travis Kelce anyways, then I don't feel like I need to play Mayer anyhow.
Yeah, I mean,
so I had Watson at 33 routes last week, which is still quite a bit below Kelsey. He's at 47 routes last week. I think maybe in week 9. And anyway, I'm like a little bit nervous about Watson because I feel like it's the Chiefs high team total. He just came off his huge target game, 11 targets last week. Like we would love to play someone else who's not just Kelsey with Mahomes. Like he seems like a steam candidate, Stone Min. What do you guys think about that?
The only reason I think he maybe doesn't get steamed is because there are a lot of enough cheap options that people aren't just gonna like auto click him because there's no other punts. Like there's guys in the 3K to 3,500 range that you could play.
Okay,
like the Cardinals
Corinne,
receivers.
you're right. Led the wideouts. You were absolutely correct. My mistake. But he's led the whole team in targets in back-to-back games around their bye.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I don't think I'm starting with the Chiefs at all, but I think they are like a very, very obvious late swap starting at 425.
Especially
it's pretty interesting. Like this is a slate where like I think I could see elite quarterback being like just a must-have on this because it's not a ton of plays that I love. And then it's like, okay, we all think that, and then we all play Hurts and Allen, and then Mahomes. It's like, oh no, the Mahomes Kelsey stack it's a perfect setup for Mahomes Kelsey stacks to actually win you something. So, it's not where my eye is drawn, but I think it's pretty sharp.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the Kelsey, well, I guess you can't late swap to Kelsey if you're starting with expensive tight end, but if everybody's paying down for Kincaid, I guess Kincaid's not even that cheap, but paying down for Kincaid and McBride, like, and only 9% of lineups playing Kelsey, you get a little flip the build. So I guess if you late swap, you have to, you have to late swap to a double tight end build.
I think the more we talk about it, the more I kind of like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good game.
I know, I'm really
and Max Crosby Max Crosby's doubtful. Like, that's probably the most important injury on the slate.
Oh, I totally, yes. I saw that before the show. I meant to write it in my notes, and I totally forgot about that because he's responsible for like over half their pressures. Like he probably, let me look that up while we're going on here.
Yeah.
Who's more likely to get steamed at running back, Pacheco or Kyron?
Pacheco.
Okay.
Pacheco probably.
He's a really strong play, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if people are going to trust Kyron in his first game back from injury. Although again, just cutting Freeman outright it seems like a pretty telling move.
Yeah, and I think Pacheco is just going to show up more in optimizers. He's projecting as like a crazy value on 4 for $4. So I assume it's going to be the same elsewhere. So opto clickers are going to get on Pacheco more than Kyron.
And then you can also correlate him with Chiefs D. So he's just more comfy.
Yeah. But I mean, he's still a great play. Like, I don't think he gets to like 20%, but like maybe he gets like 14 or 15% or something like that. After that, the games get pretty gross. We got Titans, Panthers, Falcons, Saints, which actually could be kind of interesting. Patriots, Giants, Steelers, Joe Burrowless, Bengals, Broncos, Browns. I mean, usually like when I play, when we play cash, when we hit the optos, like we see, some random players that are projecting well. Like there just aren't even players projecting well in these other games. Like, do you guys have it? Like, I just don't even know how he gets outside of the games we talked about in terms of like game stacking.
I like a lot of one-off pieces. Bijan Robinson was back to his first month of usage before the bye. So does it increase out of the bye? Also, Saints don't have Marshawn Lattimore for this game. And no Kendry Miller with Derek Carr back, who checks down to Alvin Kamara. So I think that could be interesting for skinny stacks. If you don't get to Bijan Robinson, Drake London, again, no Lattimore, had 5 consecutive games with a 21% target share plus. And then he showed back up after injury, played with Taylor Heineke and didn't get there. But Desmond Ridder was getting Drake London there every single week as a top 24 wide receiver. So I think both those options are pretty good in this game, honestly. Carr also, whenever Michael Thomas, who's on injured reserve, left the field, Carr target Rashid Shaheed on 33.3% of his dropbacks.
I was waiting for that one.
Since Carr does not connect with Chris Olave whatsoever, but he finds Shaheed every single time. So like Shaheed's the kind of guy that reaches the ceiling and then breaks the slate. So I like Shaheed a lot as well. And then David Njoku off of Trey McBride, because in DTR's 2 starts, David Njoku has a 36.8% target share.
Interesting. Is it really targets when it's like 3 yards? Like that's so ridiculous. And they bounce off his hands. Like I can't do it.
I agree.
He's kind of popping for me too, but I just can't. That's
the point though with bad quarterback play in the NFL is we adjust, and those are the kind of players, not Amari Cooper, who get there every week because they get the underneath targets. So it's especially at tight end again when everyone's volatile and we feel like once these guys reach a certain salary, we're comfortable fading all of them. Then David Njoku is not going to get played, and he is going to get the double-digit targets underneath because DTR quite literally cannot throw it deep. He just cannot.
I mean, I like the Shaheed call a lot. I mean, he's 4,300, so he's not like a perfect price pivot off of the 3K guys that they're
kind of like the ideal guy.
Because I mean, he's, I don't know if he's like Shakir, but they get that kind of different ways. But like, it's not going to be a lot of volume on either. I guess Shaheed could get some volume.
So I'll throw out one other game. This isn't really game stack game, but basically, I just want to tout Jalen Warren because he's not strong enough for me to say he's my favorite running back play. But do want to throw his name out there. 5,400 won't be heavily owned. It's a spot where getting different running back, or a slate where getting different at running back could be really helpful. And guys, we have the offensive coordinator is the former running backs coach. He's been as close to this as anyone. If anyone knows how much better Jaylen Warren is than Najee Harris outside of the general public, it's this guy. So we could actually see him lean on Jaylen Warren a little bit more, and more importantly, the Steelers I think will be leaning on the run game here. The running backs coach I imagine will be implementing somewhat of a run first game plan. The Bengals are not going to be pushing the Steelers here, so we're talking about plenty of game scripts where neutral positive game scripts where the Steelers should be able to establish it. Jaylen Warren is popping in like every efficiency metric you look at. He's been an awesome receiving back since he entered the league, but now his rushing stuff's off the charts. He had 95 breakaway yards last week. So, kind of a cheap, unowned pivot.
I don't know if his usage grows. That's the thing.
That's what I was going to ask.
I didn't even factor it in. Like, I'm actually I'm assuming it does not grow. I think it kind of stays the same where it's 50-50. He had one.
That's a fair assumption.
He had one fewer touch than Najee Harris last week. My point is, though, he's still he's probably going to be in my single entry cores. I think he's like one of the best plays on the slate salary wise, because it's as simple as he leads the league in 10-yard runs. The Bengals lead the league in allowing 10-yard runs. Those are the only dots I need to connect here. He can get there on 10 touches.
So I was going to that's what I was going to ask. Like, how many touches do we need Jaylen Warren to get there? Because I feel they're so night and day in terms of efficiency and what they could do, Warren and Najee, that the reason it's 50-50 is because Warren's like housing 30-yard carries and Najee isn't, right? Like, he's not, he has so much burst and he can get there so quick that he doesn't need 8 touches in a drive to score. He needs 2.
That's true. If you're rotating drives, you only need 2 touches.
Right. So do we even care about those splits really? What do we what's his ceiling touches where he wins the slate for us? If he gets 15 touches, he's balling, right?
Yeah.
I think he could be a top 2 running back on 12 touches, honestly, because it's that great of a spot.
Yeah.
I think we have a couple outs for it. One is that they actually, new offense coordinator actually leans on him a little bit more. But the other is they just established the hell out of the ball, So I think there's a couple of different ways that maybe Warren does hit that touch ceiling. And then even if he doesn't, the nice thing about him is he's such a good receiver and he's such a clear lead in the receiving game that maybe you get bailed out where he doesn't totally burn you, even if, the overall workload is less than we're hoping.
And I didn't even mean to make it sound like it's not going to happen. I was just painting a scenario. I think
that's like a fair baseline assumption. It's just there's upside.
But I think it definitely could happen though too.
He is not super cheap on FanDuel. He's 6,900, but he is a price pivot off of Rachaad White. On DraftKings, he's only 5,400, and he's really popping in the 4-for-4 generator. But even though he's popping in the generator, I don't think he gets steamed. I hope he doesn't get steamed, but I don't think he does.
There's enough uncertainty. You're I'm playing a Steelers part-time running back. I don't know. It just doesn't. He's not gonna feel comfy.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough room for him to get to, if Jonathan Taylor, Rachaad White, ETN are all over 20%. I don't know if there's enough room for him to get out of control.
Just real quick on ETN, are you guys at all nervous about the Dearness Johnson workload last week? Because his ETN's rushing workload was down, which seemed kind of real. So I'm hoping he's real chalky because I do not think ETN's a good play at all.
I hate
fragility too.
ETN's been a bad play for a month in a row now. So the thing is, Doug Peterson mentioned before the bye that he was aware of ETN's workload and wanted to limit him. And we've seen that out of the bye now. He hasn't handled 60% of the team's backfield touches in their 2 games out of the bye. And Tank Bigsby didn't play a single snap in the first half. It was Dearness Johnson, all behind Travis Etienne. So Dearness Johnson is very clearly their direct backup. The thing is, and I don't even think Etienne will get there in this spot. I'm not going to play him, honestly. But if they weren't to limit him in one game, it's obviously the one where their division is on the line. So that's why I think if people play Etienne, it has to be this game because this is literally the Super Bowl for the Texans and Jaguars. This is going to decide ultimately the tiebreaker here.
That's a good point. I mean, He's the second most expensive running back on the slate. It's not like he's super cheap either. Like,
No.
I think it's a really good contrarian running back week, which is not often the case.
And I only, if I'm spending down, because we don't have good values either, I only have, well, we talked about Jalen Warren and Jerome Ford is my only other one. And I still can't pinpoint when the hell they used Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford inside the 5. Ford got the carry this past week. The Broncos are dead last and yards per carry allowed to opposing running back still. Like, that's how we would attack them. So I think Ford makes a lot of sense if you think they are trying to take away from DTR too.
What's Ford's price?
5,400.
Oh yeah,
he's cheap as hell.
Well, if we are all in agreement that we don't like the ETN chalk, let's look at the other chalk and see who we do or don't like. At quarterback, we got Lawrence at Hurts. At running back, we got JT and Rashad White. At wide receiver, we got Pittman and Kirk. At tight end, we got Trey McBride, Evan Ingram, and Dalton Kincaid. On DST, we got the Patriots and the Chiefs, and we haven't talked about that Patriots game at all. So any of those chalky plays stand out as ones you want to play or want to fade?
I mean, I want to play Hurts, but a lot of the chalk I don't really like this week. So I don't think I have a lot of trouble getting off the Jaguar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think the tight end chalk's probably outside of Ingram. I think Ingram's pretty easy to get off, but the tight end chalk, I think I probably have some of.
Yeah. Daigle, any of the chalk stand out to you as players that you want to be leaning into or fading, like, very clearly? I think Rashad White's my favorite chalk play.
Yes, and I agree, but I also think that's only because the state of running back at his price. It's not really like I want to be excited about trying to get there through the air for Rashad White, because he never gets there on the ground unless he falls forward for a 1-yard goal line run. It's not pretty. Like, none of it's pretty.
Yeah, it's I
guess I think Tank Dell is the one I feel, with Noah Brown ruled out again. Yeah. He's the one I feel most confident about, because I'm really high on that passing spot through the air.
I haven't ran an update through the solver today, but I mean, 4 wide receiver lineups are just dominating optimals. So that is worth noting for sure. I
don't know how I'm going to parse Eagles, Bills, Texans offenses by the time Sunday morning. It's just, you definitely got to get the expensive plays right this week. Yeah, for sure. Before we get to our favorite plays at each position, I want to remind everybody about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Go to prizepicks.com/DFSMVP. Use the code DFSMVP for a first deposit match up to $100. This week, we have a 3-player pick'em that you could 5x your money with, starting with Aiden O'Connell, projected for 199.5 passing yards. We talked about how much that passing offense has been struggling and how much we like the Chiefs defense. We like Aiden O'Connell for less than 199.5 passing yards. Tommy DeVito last week, we got a nice game from him against the Commanders, but he is a very not great quarterback. We like him for less than 177.5 yards against the Patriots. And going back to that Texans game, Devin Singletary, 45.5 rushing yards. I like him for more than 45.5 rushing yards. This could be quite a high scoring game. And a lot of people are going to be worried about Dameon Pierce returning, but Devin Singletary has carved out a nice role for himself in that offense. Again, 3-player pick'em will 5x your money. Don't forget to go to prizepicks.com/DFSMVP. Use the code DFSMVP for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Corinne, kick us off with your favorite quarterback play of the week.
Yeah, if I'm not doing stuff with the Eagles, and I think you'll have us covered on Hurts because he's going to be pretty popular, but then it's going to be this Texans pivot, which I really think is fun, playing the other side of this game that people like, through CJ Stroud, who is the better quarterback. Can we say that yet? Are we allowed to say he's the better quarterback here? Because I think he is. And I like playing it through Tank Dell, who will be chalky, but hopefully not out of control. And I think if you wanted to bring it back, you have several different options. At least you're not, eating the entire chalk of the stack with just like kind of picking out a bring back. I also think like you could not just bring him. Where are you guys at on that? Do you feel like you have to bring back CJ Stroud stacks with one of these chalky Jaguars guys?
I mean, I think the reason I like fading the Jaguars chalk is because I think they could just fail just by not getting there, not because like a 5% own gets there instead of a 20% own guy. Like I think Jaguars just fail. Yeah,
that's
so
why
I think it's fine to not bring it back.
I hate that the Texans are the minimum price defense because naturally, usually the min price defense gets clicks because people just scroll to the bottom while they're on the toilet Sunday morning.
That's my deep play.
But I do think, I think the Texans defense is pretty live here, honestly.
Me too. I think that's the other way to pivot off of this. So I think is really interesting. But I think you want the Jaguars. If you're playing Stroud, you want the Jaguars to push
and plus no one's going to play Stroud with Tank Dell and, as you mentioned, Robert Woods or Nico Collins. And Nico Collins came back from injury and got 11 targets. Like Nico Collins is just fun. Play him. It's okay. They're a pass funnel. So the fact you're tagging those players along with Tank Dell, you're not worried about Dell and Christian Kirk chalk.
Daigle, you mentioned you think you really want to be honing on these elite quarterbacks this week. Which one do you like?
Yeah, I think Hurts for his rushing, like immediacy inside the 1 yard line. They don't even look to DeAndre Swift is the better cash game play if you pay up. But I'm curious to see where people come in on Josh Allen because again, that like the Eagles last week, who came out of the bye and Hurts threw a season low 22 pass attempts. They had 27 carries because that's how they decided they were going to game plan and attack the Chiefs. It was the same thing for the Bills offense against the Jets, where they didn't target anyone on the boundary, Diggs and Davis, because they said we were only attacking this part of the field. Now Allen can just cut loose, and he can find Davis and Diggs all day long. So I'll be curious to see where Allen's ownership comes in. I think he's definitely going to be less roster than, off the top of my head, Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts for sure.
Yeah,
but let's see where else he gets pushed down to, because then I'd be really interested.
Yeah, I mean, that is like, again, because I guess maybe it's just people are gonna have a hard time like with how expensive Hurts pass catchers are, but I think people are really scared of Josh Allen's pass catchers besides Kincaid. Obviously, Diggs is a good play, but like I don't think people like we said, people don't like playing Gabe Davis.
I mean, I'll one-off Gabe Davis in every lineup. I think Gabe Davis is, for his price, is
wild.
Like one of the best plays in the slate for his price. It's crazy.
How much is Gabe?
5,300 on DraftKings, and he's like the perfect ceiling FanDuel play.
That is kind of no man's land too. Hurts is going to be my cash game quarterback. I'm going to try to get him in there. We've had a lot of profit in cash games this week getting to Hurts, and on the slate where we have, all the prime quarterbacks are in really good spots. I think you're just giving up a lot by punting quarterback in cash this week. Let's go to running back. We haven't talked about this game, Daigle. Talk about your favorite RB.
I touched on it a little bit, but before the bye, Arthur Smith shaved his mustache, got peer pressured into giving Bijan Robinson 65% of the team's running back touches, which was his highest amount since week 4. Also went back to handling carries inside the 5-yard line, scored a touchdown too. Go figure. Whenever you give Bijan carries inside the 10-yard line, he can score on them. And so if we're coming out of the bye, Saints missing defensive players, Bijan, it does seem like also when people usually get excited about playing him, it does seem like he's kind of going overlooked in the JT range. And so, of course, I want to take a chance on Bijan out of a bye.
Bijan priced less than Kyren coming off of an injury on DK this week, and probably not going to be crazy owned. Karain, we talked about this guy a bit, but your favorite running back?
Yeah, Kyren. So I agree. We gotta get Kyren. So we've seen a couple times, and maybe these new injured reserve rules are doing good things for the league because Saquon Barkley came back off an ankle injury and just started getting like the full workload right away. Austin Eckler, similar thing. Kyren Williams, the indications are that he's going to step back into this really big workload. And I'm willing to bet on those indications, especially if the field is not, right? So, I think given that it is the first game back from injury, people are going to maybe want to see it for a week. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to jump right in here because I also have the matchup at my back here. That we've got the the positive run funnel Cardinals defense wind at our back. So, and the Cardinals are a run funnel because they're not good against the run. So this is all just, some teams it's like the Browns are a run funnel because no one wants to pass against them. The Cardinals are a run funnel because you can run on the Cardinals. And the Rams have been increasingly conservative over the past few weeks. Matthew Stafford, they've just not been able to protect him. And I think you kind of have two things working in your favor here. One is that the Cardinals have a really bad pass rush, so the offense should be, somewhat functional. They should be moving the chains, but at the same time, we've seen the Rams go kind of more conservative, and they have their starting running back. I think we'll get plenty of volume for the rushing game as well. So, I think a really strong play at modest. Maybe he could get steam, but he's not going to get out of control. I don't think, right?
Yeah, he doesn't get out of control, and he is a pretty clean price pivot off of Jonathan Taylor, who is the cash game running back. I know we made a pretty good case against playing him in tournaments, but in cash games when you get a player that's underpriced, as I said, like probably should be a $7,500 running back. He's at 69 on DK. I mentioned he's our top value on both sites. Just play JT in cash even if you don't like him in tournaments. Wide receiver, Corain, cover boy
AJ Brown. Some of it is like we're looking at a guy who just hurt us, and so maybe that'll keep people looking elsewhere. But this Bills defense, I think the numbers underestimate how bad they are, and the numbers aren't very kind. We're looking at AJ Brown, even with last week's dud in there, just such a clear, dominant number one option. This is the type of week, similarly to how we talked about, Mahomes and Kelsey. If they get there this week, it's going to make such a big difference, a bigger difference than it might normally because of the slate. And I feel similarly about Hurts and Brown. We had a couple times last year where Hurts and Brown went off and it wasn't what you needed. This isn't that slate. I think if Hurts and Brown go off here, that's going to be what you need to win tournaments.
Yeah, pretty crazy that we have these high scoring games, these elite pass catchers, and none of them are going to be 20%. Yeah, so I do think you have to pick the right one.
I'll save this point for my tight end.
Wide receiver, Daigle.
Again, the way the route tree shook out at least last week with both Michael Wilson and Zach Pascal out was Greg Dortch leading the team in target share, playing from the boundary, and Rondale Moore played from the outside. So if Pascal is active, then we think Rondale Moore goes back into or stays in the slot, and then Dortch comes off the field because he was playing where Pascal, their best run blocking wide receiver, was at. But if three people are out, Wilson, Marquise Brown, who didn't practice in back-to-back days to close the week, and Pascal, then Dortch is just out there against a soft defense. So at his salary, it just seems like a player you lock in.
Yeah, I like that. As I mentioned, we have quite a few min or close to min salary plays this week. So even if Marquise Brown is out, I don't think Dortch gets crazy steam. So I like that play a lot, especially if we are trying to fit in these elite quarterback, elite wide receiver combos. We're going to have to pay all the way down somewhere. Tank Dell is just still such a good value in cash games. If you can fit him in with an expensive quarterback, I think you want to do it this week. Daigle, you talked about this play when we were talking about the extra games, your tight end of the week.
And it's a ugly week at tight end under 4K. Pretty hard to find someone you have confidence in outside of Cade Otton, but that's not even confidence in his production, even though he did drop a touchdown last week. He should have got there. But out of the bye, he is running around on 90% of dropbacks. He's definitely going to be out there. But that's not who I'm talking about. I'm just saying David Njoku again. The target share is there. We've seen 2 starts for DTR, and he's right up there. His targets will come to fruition. Amari Cooper's definitely won't at any point. So I think David Njoku is the best play on the Browns.
Also a price pivot off of Evan Ingram. So that works well. Corain, your tight end.
Dalton Kincaid, who is going to be, the secondary chalk behind Trey McBride. But I was thinking through what, my thoughts on the slate. And if we're looking at running back where we don't love the plays, right, and they're going to be really chalky, it's where do we find our confidence in this slate, right? Running backs normally where we can find some confidence because that's, one of the more highly projectable positions. To me, I think I have confidence in this Eagles-Bills game. Like, this is what I want to build around as being where I can confidently project points in my lineup. And Kincaid is a bring back, especially as part of this don't get bored philosophy that the Bills now have. I mean, he's super boring, like he's kind of, it's like you got to throw to Kincaid to prove to Joe Brady you're not bored. This low ADOT going to rack up catches, perfect fit for DraftKings scoring there. So he's someone that I think I will be planning to bring into those Hurts stacks, or playing it from the Allen side, which I like Daigle's call there too. But yeah, getting tight end taken care of in the game that I have confidence in.
Trey McBride is $600 cheaper than Kincaid on DraftKings, so that kind of answers the cash game question for us. That $600 is going to be very important this week. DSTs, Corinne.
Yeah, Texans are another way to pivot off of this Jaguars chalk. We had a couple people tag me on the Giants last week, threw out them as a leverage play. That was nice. And we're doing it again. We're doing leverage defense, getting off of this shaky Jaguars chalk. I think, I think this Texans defense is a bit underrated. They have a good pass rush. They stop the run well. They're kind of set up to frustrate Jacksonville, who wants to play balanced and, has a quarterback who will make mistakes under pressure. So, Lawrence is coming off a good game, but like he could definitely throw some interceptions. He's kind of a up and down guy. You have the confidence with Jacksonville that they will drop back. I like the Super Bowl point. They've got to win this game. Like if they're down by a couple scores, like they're going to be out there chucking the ball. So that could be really good for having the Texans defense and an underrated pass rush.
Daigle, talk to me about attacking Tommy DeVito.
Last week's QB5, and Corain still got there because DeVito has now taken 5, 8, and 9 sacks in his 3 starts. This is also Bill Belichick against a rookie quarterback. You blindly pivot in tournaments off of the Chiefs to the Patriots defense, arguably the best play on the slate.
Yeah. And as you said, off of the Chiefs defense, who is the cash game defense, they're 100 less than the Patriots. Chiefs will probably, like I said, probably approach 30% ownership this week in tournaments, but in cash game against that Raiders team and Aiden O'Connell, you just play them in cash. That is the week 12 DFS MVP. Appreciate those of you that made it off of your Thanksgiving hangovers. If you are listening on a podcast, ask that you rate and review on whatever platform you are listening to. It helps us out a ton. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you are subscribed to the 4for4 channel. Please like this video and please make sure you get notifications for when we do go live. And if you haven't signed up for the DFS subscription yet at 4for4, Black Friday deal goes through Monday, but sign up now because you want to get all the info for the slate this weekend. $6.99. I mean, we're basically giving the thing away. We go through Super Bowl, as I mentioned, still tons of random slates to play leading up to the end of the season. So get signed up for that. And once you do that, make sure you upgrade to the solver. And of course, make sure you're reading the walkthrough every week. Corinne, remind everybody what you got going on at Leg Up.
Yeah, I got the walkthrough coming out later today / this evening / tonight. We'll see, but it will be out before I sleep. The walkthrough will be published, and I will be doing a narrated version of it. As always, you can get that on a premium podcast feed for subscribers. Head on over to Legendary Upside, sign up for $10 a month or $9.99 for the year, and it's just you get all the dynasty content, the best ball content that I'll have in the off season if you sign up now for the yearly subscription.
Make sure you get in on that. Once you do sign up for the 4for4 sub, you will get access to our Discord where you can find myself and Daigle every Sunday morning. And if you want to hear more of what we have to say, you can follow us on X/Twitter/ whatever the hell it's called these days. Corain is at Pat Corain, Legendary Upside at Legendary Upside. Daigle is at Not J Daigle. 4for4 at 4for4 Football. I'm at TJ Hernandez. We'll talk to you guys on Sunday morning.